Trying to.
Then reel that thing, man.
Good luck.
Reel this
Call meeting to order. It's good. Find out who your director is and then we can go.
Rolling. The August 26th regular meeting of the Sewer Authority Midcoastside Board of Directors is called to order. Roll call, please.
Director Kowalczyk,
Here.
Director Alfano,
Here.
Chair Warren,
Present.
Vice Chair Harvey,
Here.
Director Boyd,
Here.
Director Clark.
Here.
Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is I would like to welcome and introduce anyone who hasn't met our interim general manager, Lydia Housen. Item 2, public comment. We have comments from members of the public or directors for items not on the agenda. Hearing none, go to item 3, consent agenda. Any items to be held for discussion? Actually, in the minutes, it looks like somebody went through and changed all occurrences but one references to Tony to just say Tony Cullen, but there's one place that was missed and it still says interim general manager. I'm assuming you wanted that changed?
Sure.
Make it consistent. So, anything to be held or a motion to approve the minutes, manager's monthly report and disbursements?
I move to approve 3 consent agenda items A, B, and C.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Minutes or consent agenda is approved. Item 4, old business. A, provide update on proposed contract with Wiley Price and Rudolovich LLP for an amount not to exceed $3,000 to review and update SAM personnel policies. Interim manager.
Yes, so this item is on the agenda. I've been here for several weeks now and have had a chance to briefly review SAM's policies. And the policies are a little bit dated, and I think it would be a good idea to make them current, especially since there's a new MOU. And the process of updating human resource policies as a specialty that I don't feel comfortable doing myself. And there has been a discussion between the previous manager, Steve Leonard, and Wiley Price and Radulovich to update the human resource aspect of the policies only for a not to exceed amount of $2,500. That amount is within the general manager's authority to authorize, and so this is an informational item to let you know that I do plan to authorize an agreement and also to develop a contract with Wiley Price and Radulovich for this work.
Thank you. Do you want to mention to the full board what you mentioned to me about doing a good chunk of it here yourself?
Yeah, looking at I need to look more closely at the remainder of the policies, but there are quite a few that I believe that we can do internally, and then we might want to use an outside consultant to do a peer review, but I believe there are a number of policies that we could do internally. So I'll come back to the board later with a more detailed update on the remaining policies. The human resource aspect I thought was the most important, something we should get going right away.
Through the chair. I think that's along the lines of what we discussed early on before you were our intern. And I think that makes a lot of sense. To leverage the expertise we have.
Yeah, I like the idea when I heard it, so.
Are you imagining that this would be among different staff members, or would you be doing most of that work, or how do you imagine that work?
I would expect that I would take the lead on that work, and then I need to get into the content of the policies in more detail, but I would rely upon the staff that's here to help me with history and knowledge of how the district is run. And then if there are areas that are outside of our expertise, then I would come back to the board with a recommendation to bring in outside assistance.
We need a motion?
It says,
Or just
provide-
informational?
It says provide updates.
I move that Ellen is informed.
Say what?
I move for
Go to
Ellen
the
to be
next item.
informed.
Okay, moving on. Item 4B, discuss 5-year capital improvement program.
This is also an informational item, as is the next item. So there've been a number of discussions that have been discussed at prior meetings and were moved out to members or placed on hold or under further discussion, and this 5-year capital program is one. So from what I understand, there was a 5-year capital improvement program that was discussed at this meeting, and then there was a request that the member agencies conduct a peer review of the CIP. So I have taken a look at the CIP. It has quite a bit of information, and one thing that struck me was that it has already changed once to include electrical improvements, which are the next item. And also, it's not completely clear that the CIP, well, I haven't gone into it in a great amount of detail, but I believe that it may need more. It may not be complete, because it seemed to have been developed just from kind of a download of information that people in the field, or Tony, or anyone else who was involved in development, the consultant, just knew from working in the facilities, and it would be good to take a step back and make sure it's completely inclusive. And then the other is that I'd like to take a closer look at the CIP with respect to risk, because it's one way to implement a capital improvement program is to have a laundry list of items, what you think is important, and start laying them out in a timeline and then funding and implementing. The other is to really look at each one in the context of overall risk, which starts really with establishing what your level of service should be, what your level of risk is that you would like to accept, and the components that contribute to that, and then how each of the projects meets the criteria that you establish for the agency in terms of the level of risk that you want and the level of service that you want to provide to your constituents. So it's a very comprehensive process, well proven in the industry, not difficult to do. The most difficult part is to come up with the projects. So not difficult to do once you have the projects and you know what they're all about. And I think that this CIP, since it has not been adopted yet and the reviews haven't been completed at the member agency level, this is a good time to take a look at these projects in the context of whether they're complete and whether they address the level of risk. And then from there, we'll move into a more comprehensive recommendation for the board. So I'm planning to attend a managers meeting on Wednesday, and this is a topic that I'll bring up at this meeting to see how the member agency managers feel about doing a little bit more thinking. And it can either involve a peer review from an outside consultant, or it could involve a process internally that I would be happy to lead with the managers. And I'd like to brainstorm with the other managers how they'd like to move forward.
I hope you got an extensive understanding of why we're looking at the electrical.
I do. There are many issues. Electrical is a very important issue.
Yeah. But especially in terms of risk, and this is why
Right.
this was added. Yeah.
Maybe we should just have staff go paint a high water line out there, from how high the water got in,
Yeah.
What was it, 98? That might be an interesting thing to do, actually. Anything else on this? Are you going to be actually presenting the full listing of the CIP projects and what year they're planned for? Because I think we bumped some of them further out to put the electrical in front.
Yeah, ultimately, I do see that. I think it would be there through the member agency managers would like to really feel comfortable with the proposed timeline. I know you've done quite a bit of work on it already, and then at that point, it would come back again to the board.
When do you anticipate that happening?
I don't know. I'd like to get beyond this Wednesday. I haven't met the managers, so I haven't really talked to them about where they are in their peer reviews, or how they feel about the CIP, or even if they want to take this route. So I can give you an update at the next meeting.
So you mentioned two CIPs, the 5 and the 7. The 7, trying to understand, the 7 is a well, the 5 has been distributed to the managers for their review and comment. The 7 looks like an amended version that we did internally after. Is that right, after we distributed the 5?
Was that redistributed though? I think it was.
I mean, I'm really hoping that the managers are looking at our latest, so
Yeah.
it confuses me to see both 5 and 7, other than we started with 5 and went to 7, because really we just got so much on the plate.
Right, yeah, I know that they're looking at the electrical project, which came after the 5 and actually turned the 5 into a 7. But that's what started me thinking, so if the 5 didn't have that, and that's your most critical project, then maybe the 7 is missing another project that's equally critical, maybe not. Or maybe, you know.
What I recall is that we basically lumped it all together and then just
Right.
tried to priority sort it onto
Right.
onto the calendar to, you know, as funds would allow, the usual way, right? You
Yeah.
make your list and you sort them out.
Right.
So I think that's what we're looking at, but not having either one of these in front of me, I'm kind of having to guess.
Yeah, that's correct, that's correct. You put the electrical in front and then pushed out the 5 years to make it 7 years, that's correct.
That makes sense. I hadn't really connected, that's why it went to 7 years, but yeah, now it's obvious when you say it. Any other questions regarding the CIP? Is that it for you? Moving on.
Yeah, so the next item is the electrical reliability and improvement project, and this is the project that we were just discussing that pushed the 5 to 7. And it's just here, these items are just here because I was going through the old agendas and I wanted to get all the old information back in as a discussion item that I'm initiating so I can carry them forward at future meetings. And so this electrical reliability improvements project, it was discussed previously as a separate project, but now it will be considered integral to the 7-year or whatever the CIP becomes. Maybe it becomes a 15-year CIP based on priority and risk. We don't, meaning maybe we can spread out some of the cash flow if some of the recommended items on the back end are not as critical as they seem to be. And I don't know, I'm just speculating, but so I don't really know what's going to become of this, but the electrical project will be integral to that and not a separate project from here forward.
Do we have any concerns, I mean, where we were in August, so a couple more months and the rainy season starts. I don't remember the timeline, if the project were to get started, how long it would take. It seemed like it was fairly involved, so I guess my only concern would be, are we getting into any risk here by maybe not starting this project soon?
You're talking about the
Electrical.
Yeah, and we've had a number of discussions about this. So this project and some other projects on the list are really to address equipment that's 30 years old. I mean, there's been a sense of urgency I can read, in the report, staff reports and in the discussions. But these facilities have been around for a long time. And whether they will fail, because I'm talking about them this year or next year, we don't know. But there's nothing that, because it is already August and the wet weather officially starts October 15th, there isn't time this year to take care of these issues, which are big issues, before the wet weather. It would be risky, I think, to start any kind of construction and then be caught in an early wet weather, which has happened in previous years. So we do have this season and then through next summer to plan and design and construct the highest criticality projects. So I don't think that we're falling behind, but I think we need to make sure that this is really the most critical one. We wouldn't want to get started on this and then find out that, some pumps somewhere are worse, or another electrical project is worse, or there's some, other safety hazard that we might need to get started sooner. So I'm not looking at delaying this by months and months. It's just, it'll be a matter of weeks talking to the managers and getting some confidence that the CIP as it's laid out is the right CIP.
The event that triggered this whole look at the electrical and the levels and the plan, everything, was when that switch got tripped, right? Is there anything, have we already done something, or is there anything we could do fairly quickly just to ensure that that situation doesn't occur? Because I think if I recall, somebody had said it actually could be almost serious in terms of a potential fatality depending on where you're standing and what you're holding on to.
And so, yeah, I mean, that was an operator issue.
Nope, that was an operator issue, and mechanically, there's nothing we can do at this point. The switchgear doesn't lend itself to be updated. But, yeah, so, like I said last time, we would just stand over them when they were gonna be there and make sure, we'd have more eyes on it to be sure that that didn't happen.
We also have talked about in what weather, you know, in addition to the plant, you have pump stations. SAN has them, and the members have them also, but we were talking about the SAN pump stations. There may be some things that we can do to better prepare the agency. We can never be 100% prepared, but if there is an emergency, to be more prepared for that. And we don't know yet, we're just starting to talk about that. There's time to implement, you know, there may be time to implement other measures that would allow us to be more prepared for this wet weather, aside from rehabilitating the entire electrical system. So anyway, that's under discussion right now. You know, we're having some brainstorming sessions and trying to pull together a plan.
Good, thank you.
Real quick, you mentioned a number of steps in preparation to get to the point of construction. You didn't say permitting. I just want to make sure that we say permitting,
Right.
because here in the coastal zone, that's extra work. And, you know, our staff and consultants have really got that dialed in, but in terms of thinking about the scheduling, we know we're not going to make this year. We've got enough construction. If we do the project of putting the building over here, putting in new gear and then all that stuff, well, there's no way we're hitting October, but we can be pretty far down the design and permit process well before start of construction opportunity in the spring.
Yeah, I agree.
It's Half Moon Bay, do we really need permits?
Absolutely, we need permits. I can
Yeah,
verify that.
I'm just.
Will you ribbon me? I don't recall any issues with permits, but I'm not
Just a
thinking
little
about it.
one.
You know we need permits because we love our beaches.
We do. Scott and I agree. We're united on this one.
We love our
Our love of beaches is strong.
I even love Half Moon Bay beaches.
I love Montero beaches.
Okay.
Put that in the minutes.
I've never been to a lot
So
that's
love
like this.
that.
Let the minutes reflect.
Yeah, anything else on this agenda item? I'm wondering if there's any, can it be subsetted such that some parts of it can be safely started now? Does that make any sense?
Possibly, that's what we're trying to figure out now. Is there work that can be done now that could be completed in a way that it helps the agency through this upcoming wet weather season?
Like, you know, one thing that comes to mind is we're gonna build a new generator building. I'm sure we have contractors here that know how to build in the rain.
Right.
And, you know, so that's an example of something, you know, where we can start the permitting and the construction without
So-
worrying about the season.
I would suggest I look for at the discretion of the interim GM
Sure,
on that.
yeah.
So, if that opportunity is there, I'd bring that forward. And while I am anxious to move quickly, I also anxious to move at the right pace, do it the right way, as I'm sure you are.
Yeah, I agree. So we'll wait to hear further update. Ready to move on? Okay, that was 4C. 4D, discuss refund of $1.34 million to member agencies. I've actually lost count how many times this has been on the agenda.
This won't be the last time. So I was looking through prior staff reports on this topic, and the number is different in different staff reports. So I listed it. I saw 1.03 and I saw 1.34, and so I have them here, and I haven't actually had a chance to sit down with staff to find out, you know, to go through the background of these numbers. But in looking at these numbers and looking at the CIP and talking about the electrical projects, talking about other projects that are out there that need to get done, it seems to me to be the amount of work that needs to get done, and some of it, you know, is emergency, and some of it's urgent, and some of it's planned. There's a lot more work than $1.3 million of work. So it just seems, you know, if we're going to spend a few weeks to figure out what the plan is for capital projects, can we take the same time to wait for that plan to know what the accounting really will be before we come up with a final number? It seems like that number is, you know, has changed, and I don't know. it doesn't make sense to me to release a number and then come up with another number and then ask you to, put more money in or not.
Well-
And so if we could wait a few weeks and wait for the discussion on the capital to complete, then we'll have a better idea of the accounting.
One of the things that I suggested, and I can't remember for sure, but I think that the board in general agreed with me on the point, and I'm sure I'll get corrected if I'm remembering it wrong, is that for accounting purposes between SAM and the member agencies, I think it's simpler to return the money and then bill for the specific future projects rather than do, what do you call the thing with the 3 cups? Try and keep track of how much money was shifted from what should have been a refund into the new project. I think the accounting is harder to follow when it's done that way.
So if I understand correctly, you're suggesting to pause, understand the 5, 7, 15, 30-year plan, whatever that is, and at that time, potentially make a one-time accounting adjustment that based on the 1-year projection or whatever, the near-term projection, that if there is an overage of $1.35 million, and we understand that we will need an incremental $1 million at SAM, then we would only refund that one-time accounting adjustment at 0.35.
Right.
So it all happens at one time.
Yeah.
And I know where the chair's coming from in that I think this all accumulated from other projects that were budgeted or funded and never came to be. I think that's where it came from. And it's sort of built up, and I think there's some interest to say, hey, those things didn't happen, we want it back. Because that's the money from each of our member agencies, each of our communities. So I see I see your point, Leonard, but I think in this case, waiting a few weeks and doing a one-time adjustment makes sense to me, but I'm open to hear other points of view.
I'd prefer that our interim manager has the opportunity to actually mentally dial in what it is we're looking at, because the last thing we want is the money to get messy, right? I'm still of the opinion that, we're gonna come to the point where our agencies are gonna need to start making payments in for things that we're authorizing. Money's sitting here, we can move it back and bring it back as individual checks, or I'm not worried that we're gonna be able to do the accounting if we decide to, leave it here and allocate it, or send it back. Either way, it's.
So I agree with that. And where I was most uncomfortable is when there was extra money sitting around, not associated with something specific that we're trying to achieve for our strategic purpose. That's where I'm most uncomfortable. But if it's truing up an account and realigning it, I think it makes sense to give that window of time.
Well, if that's the general sense of the board, I'm okay with it.
Interim manager's asking for this, I think that's reasonable.
Yeah.
I mean, it was my personal feeling, it's just easier to follow the accounting, but
I'll walk you through it when we get there.
I'll start reciting pi for as many digits as I remember, which is a number.
Yeah.
Should we move on? So basically the board is agreeing with the general manager's request.
That's my understanding.
Yes. Item 4E, discuss release of retention for landscaping, WWP, wet weather flow management project.
So this item, I'm asking for direction, if there is direction to be provided by the board. This issue is related to some landscape or some seeding that occurred at the wet weather storage facility. From what I understand, the contractor spread the seed, missed one watering period. It didn't rain in January like it normally rains. The seed didn't take right away. And there's been some discussion, quite a bit of discussion back and forth about whether the contractor fulfilled their obligation or not. And I understand there was some agreement that they had, but maybe an agreement that they hadn't. So I have talked to the construction manager, EKI, and I've talked to the Granada Sanitary District manager because it's on GSC property. I've talked to the chair, talked to Tony, and it's not clear to me what the decision should be on this, so I am deferring to the board because you have been privy to all the discussions that happened previously on this matter. And it seems that it's a decision that should be continued by the board. And if there is direction for staff to release the retention, we'll do that. If there's direction to go back and talk to the contractor, I'll do that. I just am looking for some direction on how to move forward.
Is there any firm record that they did the seeding?
Yes. The construction manager has confirmed that they did the seeding.
Twice. And the watering? I mean, it's not just a one-shot thing, right? So it's a process.
I think they missed one watering. If there was another seeding and watering required, I was told they missed one watering.
So aside from that, is there anything else that gives you pause about, I mean, you're saying it's not clear what the right call here is, so I just want to understand what elements of concern you have.
Well, so so I understand that the seeding didn't take at the site. And so the question is whether the native grasses that will grow are satisfactory to the district, or if the district feels that the issue of not watering one time is enough to deem that the contractor hasn't followed the contract requirements. I mean, I could make that decision also based on what I heard, but I just have not been involved in this issue, so, and I know that this issue has been discussed quite a bit at staff level, so I'd hate to make a decision based on my, what I've heard from a number of different people.
Where we last left it at the board was that we had consulted with some experts on the subject, and they basically said unless we're willing to go in and hand weed, whatever we seed is not going to establish, and that the non-native invasives that are there now are going to overrun it anyway. Their recommendation was just to let it go and let nature take its course. So it would be just like all the rest of that strip of land, which is overgrown with invasives.
We had a flurry of email this afternoon. Of course, I was out for a bit part of the afternoon. But where I am with this is I've essentially been convinced to not worry about what's growing there, because if we try and plant something that's different from the surrounding area, it's not going to survive, and it will be crowded out by the surrounding area coming back, except that I don't believe it's going to come back, because I went out there a few weeks ago with Director Clark, who is an archaeologist by profession, and he pointed out that fine topsoil had blown away because there were no plants there holding it down, and so what was left was the sand component. And I don't know if you've checked the beach, but in general, stuff doesn't grow in sand. So I said in general. Okay, let's not take that.
I'm going to point you to Lindemar Beach and show you lots of stuff growing in sand.
Thank you, Scott.
I can take you down to the dunes over here and show you lots of stuff growing in sand. I just can't agree with the point.
Matthew, do you want to summarize part of one of your emails about the hard pan on the surface?
Yeah, I went out again today and took a look, and in the area where the soil's been rearranged, I couldn't identify a single California native plant. And I don't think there are any out there. There are a lot of naturalized plants, but it's also clear that the soil surface out there, a lot of which is barren of any plants at all. It's a hard crust that's been produced because the very clayey and gritty subsoil was brought up and either used directly on the fill for where the project was, or in some areas it was mixed with topsoil. But it's obviously not been covered with the topsoil that was taken out of the big pit, and you can easily tell that because if you walk off site, you can look at the very dark, silty clay topsoil that's there, and it's not like the parts that have still not sprouted any growth. And I think it's going to be quite some time. We'll have to have considerable rain, and it will be colonized by those invasives, the thistles and mustard. And, well, I would think it will take a couple years for the mustard to even come back. But the plants that really colonize disturbed areas, they will come back.
And that comports with what Go Native Nursery told us, is that,
Mhm.
but, I mean, they also went on to say that even if we had the topsoil, and even if we reseeded with natives, and even if we watered, we'd still have to hand weed in order to help them establish. That any effort that we did short of that would fail, and the invasives would take over anyway.
Yes, you'd have to hand weed first, put topsoil on at least, 4 to 6 inches, disc it in,
Yeah.
and then seed it again, and then water it, and
And weed it again.
hand weed it again. And if this would become a perennial project, you'd be doing this forever to end up with an island of California natives surrounded by those invasives, and that's not.
This is where it started too, right? I mean,
Right.
it didn't have natives on it when we started, it had the
No.
invasives.
Right, so that's why I said, I'm not concerned about the specific things growing there. My concern right now is that nothing is gonna grow there due to the condition of the surface.
Can I ask a question, Matt? From what you saw, the contractor claims that they moved the topsoil to a big, dark soil pile, and then after they finished the project, they plowed it back over the site. But we see that sandy white soil, there's no dark topsoil at all. Do you think that the contractor did move it back over the site and then it just blew away? Or was it
Well,
not done at all?
Oh, some of it did blow away, but it's unlikely that they off-hauled any of the topsoil. They just didn't do a very good job of respreading it, it looked like to me.
Because they had a picture, the contractor had a photograph of this big, huge cone-shaped, pyramid-shaped pile of dark soil ready to be put back over the site. But we suspected that they just used that for the infill.
Well, they certainly removed it properly and separately stockpiled it, but I'm not at all convinced that they put it back correctly.
But the question, in my mind, did they, no, I agree with both of you that whatever grows is gonna grow. We can't be out there weeding all the time, but well, my question is, I guess it's kind of too late to bring this up, but was the contract fulfilled? Was the topsoil put back to some extent? And it sounds like it was not. So that's what disturbs me.
I was directed through a link by our general manager today to a long memo by EKI. And one, there was a photograph in there of the pile of topsoil, which looked to me like far too little to have recovered all of the area. So I don't know where the rest of the topsoil went. But what we're stuck with here is that the construction manager, EKI, has written a memo saying that they followed all the specs, that the construction people did what they were supposed to do and did it accurately. So I don't think we have any basis on which to hold back the money.
Except for they didn't do the watering, so that's one
Which they,
known
yeah,
thing
which
that
they
they
do
didn't
admit,
follow the contract.
and
And because of that, whatever they reseeded didn't take hold, and because of that, part of the topsoil blew away, and because of that, we now have practically a permeable surface there.
yeah, our interim GM was told they missed one watering, but I wonder if they ever watered it.
I never
So-
saw any water.
Yeah, and we go by there like daily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I think, we have two approaches to this that I would like to put on the table. One is that Sam holds the 5,000 until rainy season, and we see if anything's actually going to grow there on its own or not, because I'm going to guess not. And the other solution is we keep the 5,000 and turn it over to GSD to repair the surface.
Or the third is to give the 5,000.
I'm not gonna vote for that. Public comment on this item, Catherine.
Yeah, Catherine Slater, Carter, Montero. I have no education except my own interest in native plants and the fact that I've been working to get native plants established on my 2-acre lot in Montero for the last 25 years. I can tell you, you can throw poppies on the ground and they'll grow. Sometimes.
For a while.
Sometimes they don't. Now, they tend to reseed and they tend to be biennials. There are grasses that you can put starts in the ground. That's expensive. One of the problems with seeding is birds. Birds like seeds. Birds eat seeds. I've walked around that area. I don't recall that being an area that looks like it has a lot of really rich tilth topsoil. There may have just been a little bit. They may have spread it and it got smushed in through the other construction with the sand. Scott's right, if you drive up and down the beaches, particularly in Lindemar, you'll see all kinds of stuff growing in sand. It used to be that you could see the ocean from Highway 1 when you were driving along Lindemar. Now, the dunes are this deep because they piled up and keep piling up on all the bushes and things that are growing in them. It's an interesting process to watch. I would suggest, if you want to find out what's going on, talk to Go Native, if you haven't already. And go with whatever Go Native's advice is. They do this kind of reseeding all the time. The best way, I've been hand weeding 2 acres for 25 years. I've got a pretty good selection of natives in there. But the invasives, I will hand weed out a whole large area, and the invasives blow in there every year. That's sort of the way it is. Invasives are invasive. What you don't want to do, what Renata and Sam wants to avoid is pampas grass getting started there, and some of the really nasty invasives. Some invasives like the mustard and the radish are sort of okay. The German ivy, you don't want that to get started. You don't want the pampas grass to get started. There's a few, the Scotch broom you don't want to get started. Those are the things you should be working against, but that's not a contractor problem. But anytime soil is disturbed, the invasives get in there. There's some nasty Bermuda grasses, there's some native Bermuda grasses, I believe. And to be real honest, I found some beautiful native grasses the other day at Home Depot. In 1-gallon pots. If you seed, your chances of success are a lot less likely than if you put starts in. But this is still too early to put starts in. You want to be doing it in November and December when they can get some rain. Hopefully we'll get rain. So I would go on the advice of the experts, which is Go Native. They do that all the time. And they're a local business and they're professionals in their field. No pun intended.
I believe that Steve did talk to Go Native when we suggested that he find one of the local experts.
We received the report, and the report was very clear, that what I've said now twice tonight.
But, at this point, I'm not really hearing any further discussion among 4 directors that we should reseed and try and do it with anything other than just, letting the stuff from the adjacent property blow in and take hold. My remaining point is I'm not convinced it's going to take hold.
Well, we've got a rainy season coming up. It's not very far away.
And that's why I'm suggesting that we hold the retention until after the rainy season and see what happens on its own.
And if I can finish.
Okay.
I'd have to make another statement. Talk to Go Native, but seed that was put down a year ago is not likely to be good and viable, having been out there for an entire year. So waiting to see what happens. Ain't nothing gonna happen but more of the invasives.
So I'm supportive of following Go Native's advice and seeing how well the invasives reseed, repopulate. I think we've got a rainy season coming up. I think it costs us very little to sit and watch how it goes. I would suggest to the property owner, you may want to consider revegetation project as something going forward, but as everybody's pointed out, it's going to take some work, it's going to take some planning. It's going to be an ongoing thing for a while. It would be incredible. I mean, we've seen a substantial project of revegetation up at the north end of Montero, the cow plants mitigation that Go Native played a very big part in. But it was a lengthy project. It took a lot of money and a lot of time. But if you look at it now, it has really paid off. It's a very handsome wetland with all sorts of native plants, providing a lot of habitat for species. It's a very good project. But it's no small thing. And, you know, welcome to the joys of property ownership.
I thought, can you check, I thought we voted to go ahead and give them the money.
I thought we voted to withhold it.
Oh. This is really, I guess I'm confused.
My recollection is we voted to hold on to it and see what happens.
Well, I mean, and in fairness, this past year, we do know that, you know, somebody could have made a calculated choice about the rain. I mean, what kind of January around here doesn't get rain? Well, January 2013. You know, I mean, it was a tough year if you called that shot.
We got blasted early in like, what was it, September? When did we
December.
do first flush last year? It was early.
And then
it never rained again.
And then we had a period of high winds, and if the topsoil layer was too thin before anything got in there to lock it down. This is a tough one. I suggest we wait. Let's see how it goes through the rainy season. And we know everybody seems to want not invasives there, but honestly, the recommendation from the experts is let the invasives back in.
It's gonna look odd if that
So,
section has something different than the surrounding
Well,
area.
that's fine if that's on purpose, but, well, frankly, I know nobody's really thrilled about invasives, but the recommendation from the experts is, absent something substantial, that's the best we hope for. So let's hope for that.
And that's why I've been convinced to just let the stuff from the surrounding area take it over again. At least it'll look uniform. even if we
Let's
don't like-
agree and move on.
Okay, so.
Just a quick question, I know this wasn't part of our project, but is there any concern that withholding the money could create any kind of legal situations with a contractor?
Yes.
Over this amount?
Tony's talked to the contractor, I don't know where you guys are, Brian, Tony, but the contractor did send a letter wanting the balance of his money. And I know Tony, the engineer suggested we at least keep him to hold off until this meeting to get some kind of clarification.
The contractor wants to charge the interest about 18% outstanding balance.
Well,
Percent half a month.
our response on that could be really simple. We're gonna retain it to reseed and just deem it an incomplete job. I mean, I wouldn't have any problem deeming it an incomplete job if this is what it takes to secure the money. If the contractor wants to wait with this and see how things go, it's possible the money might be there at the end of the rainy season, but if, I got no trouble, you know, taking a sterner position on this. And not to punish him, but I want some options at the end of the rainy season if we need them, and right now that money is the option. And it's clear they missed at least one watering. I would say that the record is not very clear as far as what I've seen to demonstrate that the job was done completely. If you want sign off, I mean, landscaping, isn't that a fairly common project bugaboo? That's the thing that's left after the project's over, and if it doesn't go well, that's the one thing everybody stares at. And then you got weather you can't predict, so unless you're gonna get in there and you're gonna bring in the water truck and you're gonna do the job, you're taking your chances. So, you know, tough beans. If it's an issue, Jim, if it's an issue, do you see a problem with saying, let's go ahead and deem it incomplete and keep the review?
Well, the problem with saying it's incomplete, we've accepted the improvements, the project, we did that 2-3 months ago.
Okay.
And we just withheld the $5,000 for this particular for this particular.
Didn't we have a caveat on the acceptance about the
I thought,
landscaping?
that's why I just mentioned, I gotta get, we're trying to figure out whether, when you asked whether we withhold or we approve the 5,000. I think it's in the resolution accepting the improvements that we hold back $5,000 to resolve this matter.
That's my recollection.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then I would suggest that if they're patient and are willing to wait, fine. If they're impatient, then let's go ahead and make the determination and hold it for whatever improvements need to happen there to ameliorate the problem. I mean, it's very clear. You go walk the site, there's bare, almost
Sand.
white dirt, clots of this stuff. And I know it doesn't look like that over most of the site. So, I don't want to get into a situation where we have to say, explain yourself. But, if a contractor wants to demonstrate they did the work, where's the photos, and help us, know that something outside of your control happened. But absent that record, it's kind of a tough spot.
You could see it from the highway. You could see the white spot from the highway. Tony, how deep is that soil over the boxes? Is it a couple of feet? So if we lose, theoretically, if we blow away, if more gets blown away, we're going to end up with the boxes showing, and that wouldn't be good either.
I know where you guys are coming from. I would make a suggestion, maybe you put the burden of proof on the contractor, so he knows you're not just putting them off, and just say, gee, we're not feeling like you really fulfilled what we asked you to do. Show us, prove to us you did, then you might feel more comfortable.
Has the
keeping
contractor
the
seen
money.
the site? Are they aware of what we're talking about?
I haven't gone out there with them, but I'm sure they are.
A couple of photos, it's like, really? You're gonna pick a fight over this? This doesn't look good, this reflects on you. So wouldn't you rather have a satisfied client who's happy to recommend your work? Or, you leave this scar on the land and then you wanna fight over it? That doesn't, I don't know how that helps anybody. I mean, it's a de minimis amount in a contract this size anyway.
Should we suggest that the interim manager and the technical services supervisor ask for Go Native to come out again, and instead of talking about, and maybe Go Native's not the right company for the specific thing I'm about to say, maybe you need a different company that I'm unaware of, one of the ones on 92 maybe. And basically ask the specific question of, is the adjacent stuff going to come back and cover up this bare surface?
You really need somebody better than Go Native on this?
I don't know, are they soil experts also? I have no idea.
They are,
I know they know plants.
well, guess what, you don't get one without the other.
Okay,
And
so that's,
no, I mean, honestly, the question's been asked and answered, and I think we're belaboring a very,
but
very
their
minor
recommendation was focused on don't reseed with something else because it'll get crowded out anyway. I want a different question asked now, which is, will the other stuff that's nearby that we don't particularly like, but that's what we have, will it in fact take over?
I would refer you to 2 meetings ago, the report that we got from Go Native, as relayed to us, was 2 parts. One was, don't bother because the other stuff will come in and crowd it out. It will take over. So they gave us that answer. So let's not be deaf to that answer. We have the answer.
Did that factor in, though, the changed qualities of the surface?
You were here. Let me dig up, I'll dig up the report, but I mean.
The answer really is eventually. Eventually, plants will grow on bare rock.
Yeah.
So.
And if we shut off the pumps in New York City in 50 years, it's
So
reverted to
There's no
nature.
doubt that eventually it will be covered with vegetation.
I don't see a whole lot of constructive conversation going on here, really. I mean, this is,
Thank you.
All right, so-
Can I make a suggestion? What I'd like to do, if this is acceptable to council, is to write a letter to the contractor, to let them know that as far as the information shows, it's clear that they didn't water one time. And if you go to the site, you can see that the plants have not grown. However, we also recognize that we've had some dry seasons. So we're going to continue to withhold the 5,000 until we get through this wet weather season. And if the plants revegetate naturally, they won't be native, we'll return the retention. Otherwise, we'll deem the construction incomplete and keep it.
But
Sounds good.
wouldn't it make sense
Yeah.
to specifically point out that we've lost topsoil because what
No.
they reseeded didn't
No.
take?
It's a tangent.
That you're getting into a whole lot of speculation there. What we know is, project is supposedly done, and look at the way it looks. This doesn't look at all like what we expected, and we know that part of the process was incomplete. We don't have to go any further than that.
All right, so can council work with interim manager to come up with something that'll pass legal muster and still, I mean, you've gotten the sense of the board here.
We can take this, she made notes of this great stuff that's gonna be in this letter, we'll take it and get it out and represent, take the position that that's what we're gonna do.
If I might, just since you raised the question, let me quote from the staff report back in June 24th. SAM's Technical Services Supervisor contacted Go Native, a local company that restores construction sites. So, yeah, I guess they know soil. And the WRA environmental consultants, the biological consultants used on the WWFMP construction, 2 experts in the local flora, so not 1 but 2. After discussion, both experts suggested that the best course for SAM is to, quote, let nature take its course, unquote, and allow the native plants to invade the barren area. Their opinion is based on the expectation that within a year, whatever was planted in the area would be overrun with the surrounding invasive species. Both felt that the money spent would be wasted.
Yeah, I remember a lot of that.
Well, that's
and
pretty clear, and it actually addresses your question. It's like, if you think you can get native species to grow on it, don't worry about it, the invasives will be right there.
as long as it regrows to look like what's around it, that's really the best we can expect, I think, realistically. It's just that I have serious reservations as to whether that's actually going to happen in the near term.
This
So
has
what?
been a lot of talk about.
All right. So what action? This isn't even an action.
We don't need, I think they've
well,
got direction. I think that.
okay, there is a recommended motion here. Oh, well, no, there isn't. All right. So how are we going to leave this agenda item now?
I believe the interim manager's suggestion sounds exactly right.
Okay. So do we need any kind of motion on this?
There is no motion to release the balance of the money, so that doesn't make any sense. So the direction is for staff to direct this letter over to the contractor with the idea we're not going to release the money this time.
The letter, as she pointed out, and you have the direction that the board is not interested in paying 18% at any time.
That's right. What should be growing from this is the grass at the site,
Not the interest.
not the interest.
That's quotable.
Yeah, we can put that in the letter. All right, so should we move on?
Please.
Item 4F, provide update on the force main repair project.
This is for our technical services supervisor.
Item 4F and 4G kind of go together. We have 2 projects going in. We brought Tim Monahan from SRT Consultants to give you an update on both of those projects.
Good evening, everyone. The 2 projects that are going on, first, the digester cleaning project. That took about 1 month and went exceptionally well. We had some problems with the contractor getting up and going, getting his equipment running, and we had to bring in some different equipment, but after it was done, and we actually got inside and took a look at the tank, that's the part that was exceptional. The tank looks incredible, it's in great shape, there's no interior damage, all the piping, supports, center column, they're all in great shape. So our fears of damage and not knowing what was in there after so many years of reliable service are approached. The contractor removed quite a bit of material. We have manifest for them. We haven't totaled it up yet, Tony, but I can't recall how many truckloads of material were dewatered and taken to Ox Mountain landfill. The tanks were hosed down, cleaned, all the rags removed. Piping was inspected from the interior of the building, from the pumps out, by SAM's staff and found to be all clean. So the contractor did some additional work for us, put in a sediment trap on the top, did some extra work as far as purging the gas originally. And they finished up work, they buttoned things up last week. We have one punch list item. They bent a metal cover on an electrical grate, and they're poised to fix that for us. Otherwise, the project is complete and successful. They did it on time. They finished up last Friday, and that's the digester cleaning project. Any questions on that?
Based on the results of it that you just reported on, what do you think the cleaning cycle in the future should be? This is, what, 12 years, 13 years?
This digester isn't the primary digester, so it doesn't take a big load for that, so we don't quite know that yet. This one here, if we keep operating this way.
Well, I thought we
yeah,
had two identical ones.
We do, but we only use one for digestion, and the other one is kind of like a secondary one, so we can mix gas out of the sludge before we dewater it.
Okay.
So until we take down that primary digester, we're not gonna know, but that's the workhorse, is the primary.
But now with this digester, with the absolute clean bill of health, and we're looking at methods for bringing it safely back online. It's a very tricky process with the digester gas. It's explosive, you need to purge out oxygen and so forth. And been talking with Tony and plant staff and reaching out to other agencies as far as bringing it up in the most, prudent manner. So once that's back online, perhaps next year, maybe look at doing the other digester, which Tony indicated is the real workhorse. And so to answer your question, Leonard, I would hesitate to give her a recurring cleaning cycle recommendation. I'd say at minimum they should be inspected at least once every 10 years. But I think we'll know a lot more when we take a look at the workhorse digester, digester 1.
Now, these are both new as of the plant rebuild in 1999, right?
Yeah, these were part of the early construction, so they went on late 97, I believe it was.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay. And for some reason, I was under the impression from years ago that they were kind of alternated, but apparently not. Any other questions on this one? Okay.
And the other project is the Granada Force Main Repair Project, being performed by Anderson Pacific. That project is going very well as also. We have our last scheduled construction progress meeting tomorrow morning. We have them every Tuesday. Contractor has, done some exceptional work, and we were very, very grateful that we got that contractor. The mechanics are very good. They're very conscientious. They're precision mechanics out in the field, using huge pieces of equipment to move around very heavy pipes and valving, but they're putting in things to within, 1/16 of an inch. It's very, very impressive. We've had a good relationship with them. They've cooperated with us as far as getting some extra work done. They're putting in one additional manhole, which is their last item of work. That's being performed down by the nursery, right at the end of Roosevelt at Highway 1.
Looks like it's right next to the vault from what do you call it, where we
Naples
pipe
Beach.
under the road?
Naples Beach, Force Main, correct.
Yeah.
We did some modifications to that vault. We put in a bypass so that we could bypass Naples Beach as well. And then right adjacent to that is a new air release valve manhole, 6-foot diameter with a aluminum cover, similar to the other structures, small, not one of the large bypass structures. So that is scheduled to go in. We're waiting for the manhole to be delivered, and as soon as it comes in, it'll probably be about 2 days worth of work. Besides that, some interior work, some painting needs to be done for coating of the new piping, the valves. Perhaps next month I can distribute photographs of the completed vaults, their interiors, and efforts to restore grass. I know that's a big item. And the contractor is very aware of this and has reached out as far as getting seed from a local garden supply that provided actually the same product that was put out on Burnham Strip for the wet water storage.
We'll try to make sure that they hydro seed this time instead of spreading it by hand, which is what they didn't do at Burnham Strip.
We've talked to them about that. First, it sticks better, the birds don't go after it, and once you hit it with water, I've seen hydro seed grow on the side of a truck. I mean,
Is hydro seeding what was done next to the Heflin Bay's parallel trail where it looks kind of like they spray painted it green? Is that hydro seed?
I believe so, yes.
that's hydro seed. It's
So,
a mixture.
so I guess the hand dispersal method isn't the best then.
Broadcast method is great when you're feeding birds. Try to grow grass.
That's another reason why we made the right decision, the previous agenda item.
That's for hydro seeding or individual planting. Each seed has sufficient depth, so each seed is safe to grow in its natural environment.
Now,
I think that might be a significant change order.
What you may not be aware of is when GSD did that project to connect up the force main there, in Caltrans encroachment permit, there was some requirement for revegetating above the project. So Caltrans pays attention to that.
Okay, well, we've been in touch with the county. Maybe we reach out to Caltrans, make sure that they don't have anything.
I don't know what county would have to do with it.
Oh, well, it was some work down by the end of Coronado Avenue.
You took it also.
We fixed made some drainage improvements there, right next to the valve wall.
You said Coronado, but you're actually talking about Miramar where there's some white rocks that look like they're protecting a channel?
Yes, when we dug down to put that vault in, we found out that the pipe which drains the end of that cul-de-sac just went into nothing. It went into a buried French drain. It was a huge amount of stone wrapped up in permeable fabric.
I'm shocked.
And it
that was
wasn't
sarcasm.
Huh?
I'm shocked, and that was sarcasm.
Yeah. And it obviously didn't work. The cul-de-sac was always backing up. It was flooded. And so we asked the contractor to clean it out.
So what you're saying is we're leaving it better than we found it?
Yes, much better, to the applause of the neighbors who were upset about the night.
I kind of got the idea from driving by on the highway that the reason that was done is to keep the water out of our new vault. Because it looks like you're directing it away from the vault.
That too. And the natural flow course is in the way that the rocks are positioned. But again, I think once the rainy season comes, we have some seeds, some hydro seed down there, and the vegetation really starts to go. It'll be hard to identify that, soil.
So when are you figuring they're going to revegetate? I mean, demobilize?
They're partially demobilized now. They're, as you've seen, we've certainly had them consolidate their work area down on Burnham Strip. They should be moving out their large excavator next, not today's Monday, on Wednesday. And they plan on, taking other pieces of equipment out as they go. They are, for all intents and purposes, substantially complete. We are using the new facilities successfully. Again, there's just a list of items such as painting, seeding, and so forth. And, putting back up the street sign here, and a do not trespass sign somewhere else. And, little odds and ends like that we're, by next board meeting, we'll be completely confident.
So how is it doing budget-wise? Under budget, over budget?
We're not under budget. We have requested several additional items be performed by the contractor. Some things regarding where the utilities were located. As I explained at the last board meeting, we had some change orders regarding moving the vaults to different locations and breaking them up to make them more manageable, to put them right under the power lines. So there are some, I don't have the numbers at my fingertip, but I can certainly send you a summary of.
Well, if we treat it as if the change orders increase the budget, then how are they on target? Yeah, so say the budget was $1 million and we did change orders for 100,000, so did they hit the 1.1 target?
Yes, I believe the total cumulative change orders are less than 6%. And I need to do those numbers. Less than 6% additional to the contract value.
All right, so
Did I answer your question?
does that mean the whole contract price is at the end of the project coming in at 106% of the original budget if the change orders added 6%?
Yes, yes. Well, let me, don't quote me on the 6%. I can get the numbers, they're in my laptop. I could get you those numbers out the break if you'd like.
Well, I'm not that concerned about the specific percentage. I'm just wondering if it's on budget, ignoring the fact that change orders added.
Oh, yes, yes it is.
Okay. That's all. Thanks. Any questions?
Thank you. Okay, thanks.
New business. 5A, receive presentation of provided services, telecom systems. That must be somebody I don't recognize.
At the last board meeting, the board asked that we invite Calcon in so they could kind of give you an overview of what they do for us. And so we asked Ryan Smith, the general manager of Calcon, to come in and do that demonstrate tonight.
Yeah.
All right. Hi.
So we've been providing services to Sewer Authority for many years, since the early 90s. And Tony asked me to come and introduce myself. I recognize a few of you from other meetings. Came to the Montero Water and Sanitary District Board meeting recently. And just wanted to introduce myself. Our company provides along with some basic electrical maintenance services. We handle the SCADA system and the PLC system that controls all the remote.
I'm gonna have to ask you to explain those, I don't know the acronyms.
No problem, no problem. Okay. Well, all the remote lift stations, the pump stations, have controllers inside of them that turn the pumps on and off. They monitor the liquid level of the wet wells, and they turn the pumps on and off. And those controllers we call a PLC, a programmable logic controller. It's just a specialized industrial computer that is designed to do one logic routine over and over and over and over many times a second. So it doesn't run Windows or anything like that. It just sits there and loops through the same logic over and over. And it basically reads the inputs of the system, being the liquid level or the floats that are down on the wet well, and decides whether or not to turn on the pumps. So those are critical devices, and they're in every pump station, virtually every pump station that you have.
Were these accessible from the internet?
No, they're not. And they...
You have to crawl down there.
It's a good question. They communicate back to the plant through licensed radios that are on a FCC licensed band. And the plant has a computer system that monitors the status and has visual graphics that the operators can see to see how the systems are doing. And then also here at the plant, that same SCADA system monitors all of the automated equipment here. And it's an intricate system that's made up of a lot of sensors and electrical equipment, variable frequency drives, and all kinds of things that turn motors on and monitor temperatures, dissolved oxygen levels in the aeration basins, flow rates, that kind of thing.
So to be clear, the pump stations can be controlled from here?
The pump stations, the pump stations are controlled locally. They're basically supervised from here. The signals come back here, and the operators can see the levels of the the liquid levels of the wet wells, they can see if there's any alarms, but they don't control the.
So the
pump
data,
station.
the data path is one way, which is from the pump stations to the plant.
Right, they don't make changes to the remote stations from here. They just monitor, all that data gets, aggregated in this one computer.
The reason I was asking is because if the answer was that it was two-way, then my next question was gonna be, is the telemetry encrypted? But it's an irrelevant question if it's one way.
Yeah, it is basically encrypted. The radios are all locked to each other through encryption. But basically, we provide services for maintenance, new installations. Most of the time for Sewer Authority, it's maintenance. It's keeping up the existing infrastructure, replacements, troubleshooting, that kind of stuff. And I mean, we recently provided the controls for the Granada Sanitary District Naples Beach project that we bid on. I believe that was last year. And we provide preventive maintenance services. So along with the SCADA system and the PLC system, there's routine maintenance and calibrations of instruments here at the plant and out at the stations, including the important things like the flow meters, which I know that the district's base funding on and billing on and that kind of thing, and the level sensors, the temperature sensors, all of those critical components that give the plant operators the ability to see if the system's working properly. So our company, we have about 23 people. A few people know your facilities really well, and several of us have been working out here for many years. The owner of our company worked out here many years ago and knows the place too. And we have a really great working relationship. We really appreciate the business, and we always work hard to earn it, and we're always just looking to be called back again, and that's gone on for many years. We're at your service, so pleased to come and introduce myself, and of course any questions that you have, I'd be glad to answer.
Any questions?
Through the chair, I think it was last month, I happened to have the bill. I think it was like 17,000. And I happened to get the one for this month, and it was 15,000. And I was just curious, I mean, it's a lot of, obviously, money on a monthly basis, and I was just curious what the company does and the history and so forth. So it's been helpful to have you here tonight. I mean, my feeling is that anytime we have large expenditures, it's good periodically to understand better what they are and, are they justified?
Yeah, we're happy to answer any questions. Tony has a pretty intimate knowledge of what we're doing on a daily basis, whatever it is we might be doing, and his staff obviously knows what we're doing, what we're being asked to do, what we're being asked to fix. The way it typically works is, we get called, we're on call for you 24/7. Our guys have pretty regularly been called out in the middle of the night during a storm or that kind of thing to help figure something out that might not be working or something that got damaged. And a lot of things with the facilities here for Sewer Authority are repairs. I mean, there's some aging infrastructure and sensors that don't work or need to be repaired or sent to the factory to be calibrated and put back into service and that kind of thing. We're always happy to answer any questions whatsoever. Tony asks us questions when he's not sure what it is that we've done or that we're sending a bill for, and we've had a great relationship for many years. So,
who is responsible for testing things like the UPSs? Do you guys do that, or do they do that?
It depends. When they do, one of the things we're going to talk about next is the annuals maintenance that they do for preparing for winter, and they'll include that in that typically.
The reason I'm asking is I'm still kind of smarting a little bit over some significant overflow. I think it was at the Half Moon Bay pump station a bunch of years ago when the power went out and the UPS failed.
It wasn't quite like that. there's
I don't remember the specifics, but I remember there was an incident that somehow involved the UPS not doing what it needed to do.
It's when it was smoke because of the power coming into it. And since then, the approach has been changed a bit, so there's ways around that. That whole thing could go away, and the station will still run.
But that kind of thing, that's outside of what Calcon looks at?
No, we help you with those items too. Part of the challenge with like the UPS is the UPS can't run the pumps. The UPS can only, keep the PLC, which is monitoring the level.
Oh, now I remember, we didn't get the alarm that the pump wasn't running because the UPS failed. The alarm didn't come through.
Which would be, the PLC not staying on, and I'm not familiar with exactly what incident that was, but, I know that since then you've also upgraded your alarm system, the backup alarms. Tony had a new alarm company come in to monitor through the phone line. There's an ability of each station to call through a standard phone line to an alarm company, like the same type of alarm company that monitors home intrusion and that kind of thing. So there is a backup to the PLC system that comes through SCADA, but the UPSs are certainly one item that we help you with, and those items, UPSs age and they need to have batteries changed out. Sometimes they need to be changed out completely. And we work with the staff to show them how to test the UPSs. I know that they do that on a regular basis, not just when we do it.
So does Calcon look at the big picture and sometimes recommend changes to the technical services manager?
Yeah, certainly. Certainly. He asks us for our opinion, and we provide recommendations regularly.
Just give you a brief anecdote. We recently in Montero suffered an equipment failure that could have been very, very bad, and Calcon came in and worked with our staff to try to figure out the best possible thing to do for it. And we wound up with something which I thought I saw some ingenuity and some careful thought into not only getting us out of that tough spot, but getting us set into a better place so that kind of thing can't happen again. And a lot of these are, this is the first time this kind of thing has gone wrong. So, it's great when we can engineer for things to make them fault tolerant, but it's also great to be working with people who are solving some problems on the spot. And that was just real recently, and I thought they did a really good job.
Any other questions?
I have a question. So I was read over your brochure that was included in our packet, so thank you for that. And one of the items mentioned in the area of expertise is flow meters. And I'm curious if you were involved in, and maybe Tony, were they involved in diagnosing and helping to sort out issues we've had with our flow meters here?
Yeah, we've performed flow meter calibrations, and we certainly we have an interesting configuration here at the plant, but that goes back to when it was upgraded. But we certainly have been involved with the flow meters. I know which key flow meters are the ones that go from
August, I'm referring to a situation we had where they gradually went out of alignment, and we had to do some years of tracking and sorting to figure out and get them to where we felt confident in them.
I think it was actually the telemetry between the meter and the recorder in here.
That's what it ended up being. So, I don't know, maybe Tony, was Calcon involved in trying to sort that? Is that an area where you worked, or is it simply other than that? Involved in that? Okay.
I guess maybe to expand Rick's question, were they involved in the problem in the first place?
Did they fix it?
No, there was an issue, there was a problem with the system.
There was.
How was Calcon involved in that problem initially?
Well, they were helping us sort through that. And,
But were they involved, if they were there, why did that problem happen?
Ultimately, we ended up changing the meter and then actually moving from that meter to another meter. And we're still using that meter. The meter that we use to report our effluent flow, we use that now, along with tap and base dedicated meters.
That's right, so we added some more new components to the system. Is that the answer?
We took over tap and base.
But I interpreted Jim's question to be You know, with the periodic maintenance that Calcon does, why was the failing telemetry not discovered? Is that what you were getting at?
That's what I was trying to ask.
Typically, maybe Ryan can explain it better, but they looked at the meter, and we even changed the meter, and the problem still existed. It's still to today, it's not completely resolved, and we've changed everything, and we don't know.
Okay.
So we just moved on.
Well, to defend myself a little bit, we weren't always doing all the flow meters. There was a period of time where we weren't doing the calibrations. I'm not sure exactly what problem you're referring to. But I have provided Tony some information and some opinions, and we've discussed the, I think the influent flow meter. I don't know if that's the one that I'm talking about. And, you know, there is some question about accuracy. You know, a flume like that is typically basically a plus or minus 5% device. So as good as it could be, it's going to be a plus or minus 5% device. But I don't know exactly.
No, it's fine. It was just Rick and I were just kind of wondering if this kind of. I took the optimistic side of that question, Jim, but I didn't. So Ryan,
But I think it's working great now, and I think we've, you know, the last few calibrations I've been watching very closely, and the influent and the mid-plant flow meters are dialed in, and Tony's, you know, expressed that things seem to all be jiving. So I hope that answers the question.
It does. And I have, like I said, there's a question for interim general manager and for Tony. So, which is, do you have a ballpark sense tonight about what we spend per year with Calcon? And if not, it's fine. If we can, at the next meeting, if we could just have a rough sense of what that is on an annual basis.
I'd rather look.
Okay. Just curious what that is, because as it looks sizable when we approach the budget season, I'll have some other comments to make on that.
Well, and I'd like to make a comment on that. I don't know, I was planning to make it under the manager's report, but I think this is directly related, is that there is work by Calcon and by others that have been, that has been completed for the agency over periods of time where we don't have definitive scopes. You know, a lot of it's as needed, you know, by individual contract, by individual authorization. And, you know, I think to answer the questions that I heard from Director Alfano and yourself, it would be beneficial to have all of that information together so that we can track, you know, the different expenditures against different scopes of work and be able to answer those questions for you readily. And so that's something that we're working on also in the background.
Awesome, that would be great. Okay.
And just to describe a little bit, I mean, I think I mentioned we pretty much act on a as-needed basis. Most of the projects, 90% of the projects that we do are something broke and the district needs it fixed fast. And we really pride ourselves in providing fast service. We're here usually within an hour or two, anytime somebody calls, and we charge the district a very preferential low rate because of our years of great relationship, and we really consider Sewer Authority one of our best customers. So we really appreciate the business, and thank you.
And thank you, by the way, for getting up in the middle of the night when you have to do that. We also appreciate that.
I would hope that you help examine the whole system and suggest things that might be done preemptively to avoid unexpected failures.
Yeah, these things aren't always easy to swallow, but we're always happy to recommend what we think. They're not cheap solutions. Yeah, for example, the chemical metering system out here that's not covered and wasn't covered when originally designed and built in, I believe, the 90s, the 97 upgrade or 99 upgrade. That's a very dangerous aging system out there. It's not going to be cheap to fix it, but it's wearing out because of the elements. So I mean, there's a lot of things like that, and we certainly don't want to make the Tony or anybody here feel like we're pushing projects that don't need to be done. But on the other hand, we do try to recommend, and Tony's intimately aware of the infrastructure that, you know, he has to prioritize what can be repaired. And we definitely are a partner in that, and we really, we're a design build company. We really focus on the big picture and you know, helping to prioritize, helping to understand what makes sense to fix now. And you know, we know that these choices aren't always easy, so.
And this
we're happy to
feeds into
provide-
the discussion that we had earlier on the CIP. And these types of analyses from Calcon and from others, they should all be integrated into the CIP instead of having an inspection here and a reaction, an inspection here and a reaction, an event and a reaction. So that's what we're working toward.
One of the things I think it's really helped is the annual electrical maintenance that I think you're going to talk about next. We provide a very detailed report for every single motor in the facility and the pump stations and the wear and tear on the motor. We clean out the electrical cabinets and we inspect contacts and all the electrical equipment. And we provide a very detailed report on the condition of things. And I think that's really one of our project manager, Brandon Powell, has really worked hard to provide a great report. I think that's made a big difference over the last couple of years, cutting down on emergency failures. So
Was it your guy that threw the switch? Nope. No, okay.
No, I hope not.
I don't have any other questions.
All right, wind up this item.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks.
Okay, item 4B, authorize interim manager to finalize and execute contract with Telecom Systems for amount not to exceed $11,500 for annual electrical preventative maintenance inspection.
Tony, do you want to introduce this?
Sure. So what we're asking is that you authorize us to spend money to do our annual pre-winter electrical maintenance. And this isn't just for SAM motors and switchgear, it's also for the lift stations that are owned by the member agencies. And we do this every year, and we just, because of the amount, we wanted to bring it to the board for approval. And we feel that it's absolutely necessary, and like Ryan just explained, they really get into detail and all the little things that can go wrong, even tightening screws on wires, they check all of that. And they're very thorough, and it's just very helpful.
This item falls under the manager's authority for initiating a contract without bringing the issue to the board for approval, except the purchasing policy does require multiple proposals for this type of work. There is an exception, though, in the purchasing policy where the manager can recommend that the work go to one specific vendor if there is one specific vendor who can do the work and only one. And we feel that because of the history, as you heard from Calcon, and the familiarity with the facilities and the fact that this is wet weather readiness and everything really has to be done right, there needs to be a really good understanding of what could go wrong so that there can be a very thorough inspection of what we have, that for this project, it is justified to have asked for only one proposal from Calcon, and to we have reviewed the costs. They seem reasonable. And so also as another part of this, as I mentioned before, we haven't had a formal agreement for this type of work before, but at this time we'd like to begin with that practice. And so if so desired by the board, I'll work with council to develop agreement language and initiate an agreement with Calcon for this work.
So it's not explicitly stated in the staff memo, but I had spoken with the interim manager who indicated that staff feels that the quote from Calcon is consistent with what they expect to get from other vendors.
So for a project this size, for this amount, do you feel a contract is warranted, or is I'm just curious if this, what benefit do we get from a contract on something like this?
In my experience, there's been a contract vehicle for any type of work, either a purchase order or a formal contract or a master agreement with task orders. I mean, there's always been a contract vehicle for work.
There was no.
Might be a matter of semantics here, Scott. Let me talk with Vivian about how purchase order,
Right.
task order, formal, I think he's hearing formal contract.
Oh, right.
Well, I heard the word contract,
Yeah.
so I heard the word contract.
Does that imply that work has been directed of this magnitude without purchase order or contract? Like, hey, go do a bunch of work for $20,000 and off and go do it? Is that what I'm hearing?
Depends on the work. Something like this, there usually is a purchase order signed by the manager, it's over my authority.
Okay. So there's something to direct the work in with a specific scope of work. And you suggested something other than that, something more?
The thing that I would be accustomed to in this kind of circumstance is a master services agreement with purchase orders
Yeah, yeah.
that are subject to the MSA. Is that the kind of thing?
We'll just, I just.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, that's the sort of thing that I was thinking
So
about.
if we don't,
Okay.
if we don't have an MSA with a major contractor, we should have an MSA.
An MSA is a good thing, it helps avoid conflict. That's the
Yeah.
purpose of an MSA.
So
Although it's Calcon, and in this case, you know, we've got a really great relationship.
It's always great until it's not great.
Yeah,
Like
it's,
our relationship, Scott.
that's true. I was thinking about, could we meet to talk about an MSA? Is that the?
It's our prenup. On that note, I move to
Wow,
authorize
okay,
the interim
that
manager.
went wrong direction.
Sorry. I move to authorize the interim manager to finalize and execute contract with Calcon Systems per the details of agenda item 5B.
Second.
Sorry, Scott.
You didn't read the suggested motion. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 8-0.
First one.
Item 5C. Authorize interim manager to finalize and execute contract with Dan Cordovis, consulting engineer for an amount not to exceed $6,300 to update the SAM WWTP, that will be the wastewater treatment plant, pump station, and contingency plan O&M manual. Operation and maintenance.
This is very similar, it's a very small amount. In fact, part of the review of the policy will be to review whether a $5,000 limit, you know, above which every item comes, or requires additional quotes, is the right limit. And I'm not saying whether it is or not, but you want to introduce the benefit of having Dan on this?
So Dan wrote our original documents, and these documents are used by staff, you know, to be trained with or to operate certain aspects of the plant they might not do often. There's also a regulatory requirement for these, and that's why we asked, would we have Dan do that? He's this is what he does, and he's very efficient and good at it. And we feel much more confident in him doing it than doing it in-house.
So do we benefit price-wise from the fact that he did the last update?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, this seems like a very reasonable
Yeah.
price for what he'll be doing.
To the chair, like a motion. I recommend we authorize the interim general manager into a contract as approved by SAM Council with Dan Cordovis, PE, to provide updates to the wastewater treatment plant, pump stations, and contingency plan and O&M manual.
I second the motion.
All right.
Gotta be faster on there.
This would move and seconded. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Motion passes 8-0. Item 6, managers report. Can we sit down in the audience, please?
You have to be louder than the audience when you say that.
Item 6, managers report.
So I actually had a little cheat sheet in here that, obviously, so I'll have to go by memory. Most of what I was going to talk about, we've talked about already, in terms of looking at the budget and looking at the CIP and looking at policies. There is one item that I would like to report on that I will be looking into very closely in the near future. In fact, I've already started. On September 9th, the statewide waste discharge requirements for collection systems, there's an updated requirement, and it becomes effective on September 9th. The requirement has already been issued to regulatory agencies. There's different reporting requirements. They're specific specific requirements that have to be followed for larger spills. And I know that SAM provides collection system maintenance by contract to the members and also to itself. And so I'll be reviewing that contract closely in light of the changes in the waste discharge requirements. There's also a requirement for sewer system management plans from all agencies, and also I understand from talking to the managers that these SSMPs, they're called, are being updated. And so because of the timing of the new waste discharge requirement, the timing of the updates for the SSMP and the content is very important. And so in the next few months, I'll be working with staff, our staff, and also member agency staff, since SAM provides those services by contract, to make sure that everyone's in compliance with the new WDR.
Doesn't feel like it was all that long ago that we did the SSMPs.
2008 would have been your earlier requirement.
That long ago. Gee, how time flies when you're having fun.
We did one update, or one review in between that and that.
So you referred to a large SSO. What was large?
Right. If there is a sewer system overflow of 50,000 gallons or greater, there are increased requirements for water quality testing, a water quality testing plan, and different reporting requirements. And that's new. There's also a Category 1, Category 2, and Category 3 spill, which is one more category than we currently have. So the reporting needs to follow the new protocol. There's also a requirement to submit the sewer system management plan to the regional board or to have it posted on the website.
So did the individual agencies submit those SSMPs, or is SAM doing it on our behalf?
The individual entities must have one on file. You know, we need to talk at the managers meeting of whether SAM would complete an individual. I mean, they would look essentially the same because the, you know, staff and equipment and all of that would be the same in the methods. So that's one item that I plan to bring up on Wednesday at the managers meeting, is to find out what the status is of the SSMP at each agency and how the updates will be completed and made consistent.
Now, I would have to say I'd be really shocked if we, other than during major wet weather, ever had an overflow above 50,000 gallons. So just astounding for this agency for that to happen.
Still have to have a plan.
So the water board's website doesn't seem to call out the changes. Is it, do you know a place to go?
I can send a link or.
I'd appreciate that.
I will.
And if it's helpful, I know on your cheat sheet, a couple other items you had were a budget review on there.
Oh, you have my cheat sheet?
I think I do.
It's funny.
Really?
I don't have that copy.
There's budget review.
Well, it's a list of bullets on
Is
the.
this on camera?
That's great.
We'll edit this out later.
Yeah, oh, that's what I had, that's right.
We'll edit this
Wait a
later.
minute, that's not in the paper copy.
Is that not yours?
Huh?
It is.
I must have an old version of the paper copy
Really?
here.
Yeah, it's
Well,
not
show me
mine.
where it is in my paper.
Well, anyway, you have it.
I
So.
don't have
So I
it.
do have it, this was the report that was intended to go into the board packet, so you do have it.
So if there's anything else you want to comment on?
So I am going to review the budget, begin reviewing the budget now. I know that, you know, the actual development of next year's budget won't really happen in earnest until the beginning of next year, but now's a good time to review where we are, especially if we're looking at the CIP, looking at operational expenses. So that's on my list. The open contracts we've talked about, policy review, we've talked about sewer system management plan, and the collection system operations and maintenance and contracts, which we just discussed in the context of the new waste discharge requirements. So, yeah, that takes care of it. Thank you.
Sure, I guess we'll hear more about this next month.
So did
anything
it
else?
not, I'm curious, did that staff report not come up in your?
It's in my copy.
It's in my
Oh,
copy.
it is?
Not in my
It's not
copy.
mine.
It's not in my copy that says there are no attachments to this staff report.
Yeah.
And somebody ate my porridge.
So, that's interesting. Did some of you get hard copy and some electronic?
Yeah.
Yeah, the electronic.
Electronic.
The electronic has it.
My hard copy has it.
Yeah.
Well, we have at
Okay,
least two
we'll
hard
make
copies.
sure that doesn't
We have at least
happen.
two hard copies that don't have it.
It was just a bullet list of what I just mentioned. There was no other details, so you're not missing too much. But we'll
Okay.
be more careful about that in the future.
Anything further for managers report?
That's all I have.
Attorney's report, item 7.
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Item 8, director's reports.
I have
I got an email from GSD's administrator on parts of it I do not want to read, but she's asking about a call out today, which requires us to hire someone to TV the line because Sam doesn't have the equipment. And basically, our administrator's getting really annoyed at this. And she's raising issues about the information we're getting from Sam. She says Sam can only speculate on the problem. How can Sam adequately provide maintenance and emergency services without a camera? Why isn't it a priority?
Why isn't this a discussion between your manager and the same manager?
I think it affects all the member agencies.
I don't understand why this isn't a discussion between your manager and the same manager. I don't know.
Well, so what's your
Well, I mean,
point?
we can do that if you want, but.
Well,
Len, I
yeah.
want to understand what's your point of bringing this up? Do you want us to speak with this?
How long have we not had a working camera? You know, member agencies pay Sam to do the maintenance,
We
and
actually-
Sam
we
can't do
actually
the
have-
maintenance without the camera.
We actually had a discussion at our last meeting about this, and Tony gave us some background on how the cameras wear out. And we were making plans to get better equipment, but
A new camera.
that was actually topic of discussion at the very last meeting.
Chair Warren, to answer that, I think that's an important topic, and I would like to, part of what I would like to do as we prepare for the new waste discharge requirements and the new sewer system management plan is to review the contracts to find out what is our obligation. Because if we are obligated to provide these services under contract, we need to provide them. And I just don't know today, what our obligation is. And if we don't, we should change the contract to make sure that the right work is described in the contract and then, commensurate payment is in there.
But at the last meeting, Tony gave a detailed discussion of the old camera breaking down, looking for a new camera. And purchasing a new camera in the future, in the near future.
You don't want to push me into asking how many times the camera's broken down.
We actually had that conversation at the last meeting, and I'm not sure why that's not at the front of your mind, but apparently it's not, so allow me to remind you that we had that discussion at the last meeting. And Tony gave us, he answered all of our questions on this topic and had plenty to offer, and it sounds like he's got a plan in place.
You were here.
All right, well, like I said, I got my administrator asking me about it.
Well, I'm wondering why your general manager isn't involved in this. And frankly,
Well, he was CC'd on this.
that sounds great, so.
Hasn't weighed in.
But it sounds like the kind of thing where, honestly, it sounds like the kind of, dropping of a bomb with no preparation for, nobody having the opportunity to respond. It seems like an inappropriate form to it. If you had exhausted everything, that'd be one thing, but it seems premature. Especially in light of the discussion at the last board meeting. It was going to remind you again.
Any other director's comments? Tony, did I miss the snapshot day, first flush training? Because I got a phone message and no email, and now I can't find my note. The snapshot, I keep getting these mixed up. First flush is coming up, which is where the first substantial rain of the season, a bunch of us go out in typically nasty weather and take samples of things flowing to the ocean. And so I'm always trolling for additional volunteers.
To use the pot.
So I just thought I'd mention that, but did you get a phone call? I have to go find the note. The caller ID said U.S. government, but it was the office over on Miramatis.
I'll ask Carl. Get an update on that.
Okay. And so if anybody's interested in doing that, kind of fun as long as we don't get too wet. So contact Tony or me for more information. And that includes any members of the public who are interested. All right, so item 9, closed session. Do we want to have the camera stick around for the open session after the closed session?
I think it never necessary.
We normally don't.
I don't think
I suggest we don't.
All right, so we are going into closed session for the items as listed on the agenda, which is to public employee performance evaluation.
Sure, I'm happy to stay, but I don't want to leave. So,
Anybody think we need counsel?
Need counsel, don't need you to stay. Stay, it's my role. I don't want you to feel unwanted.
We need to talk about legal counsel.
Oh. That's different.
What you need is
Can I rephrase my question?
All right, so we are going into closed session.
Take a break so they can.